I'm rather excited about this segment because Three Rivers Petroglyph site is one of my favorite places. It's small and I bet you never even heard of it. I discovered it almost by accident after my first trip to White Sands in the early 2000s. When I was driving back, I saw this sign. And since exploring should be a part of every trip, I decided to follow the arrows. I had seen a few petroglyphs in Utah's parks and in Arizona's petrified forest, but I've never been to a park that was named after them. By the way, petroglyph literally means rock carving. Three Rivers is small and littered with dark rocks, covered with thousands of ancient rock carvings. I'm not sure you can find any place with more petroglyphs in such a small area. There's also the ruins of a few homes of those who made them. It's less than an hour north of Alamogordo, and between several of the Rift's parks. So if you're doing the Rift tour, no matter which route you take, you're going to have to pass by this place. And since it's just 3 miles off the main road, you need to check it out. It has a small campground with a couple of RV hookups. The ranger in the very small visitor center accepted my All Parks Pass, gave me a park info pamphlet, told me it was legal to fly the drone, and let me know where the old village is. Most of the glyphs are near a 2-mile round-trip trail. There is no fence and just 2 rules to protect it. The next sign is a little scarier. Now, I've been here 5 or 6 times and I've never seen a snake of any kind. This bridge, it's over a dry gully. Was this one of the 3 rivers? We're heading to a ridge with lots of volcanic basalt boulders. Basalt has lots of iron and magnesium. Over time, its surface oxidizes to a dark brown patina, which can be chipped off to make pictures. Follow the sign and start going up. After just a few feet, within view of the parking lot, the petroglyphs are everywhere. Nearly every rock has at least one. The main route is along the crest of the ridge, but there are several spur trails, like this one. When you see all of these, you can't help but wonder who made them and why. Well, the area was occupied intermittently from about the year 200 through about 1450 by a people archaeologists now call the Jornada Mogollon. And I'm probably saying that wrong. They seem to come and go based on local climate conditions. When I first came here, they were known as the Anastasi, as they had been since 1927. That's now an out-of-date pejorative term, because in Navajo, it means ancient enemy. There are 11 markers for particularly important petroglyphs like this one. This one has a circle, like over 10% of the glyphs on this site. And no, I'm not going to show you all the markers. I prefer to give you the gift of discovering them for yourself. There are a couple of ways to make a petroglyph. The fast way is to use one rock to scratch another. Most of these are made the hard way, using 2 rocks, one as a hammer and the other as a chisel, and moving them around to make a picture. The main trail is pretty steep in spots, but the total elevation gain is only about 150 feet. And the glyphs are still everywhere. Some of them use bumps and rock shapes to make them more realistic. Here, a bump was used to make an eye of a bighorn sheep. And here, to make the face appear in 3 dimensions. Faces and people are frequent subjects. The faces tend to be round. Some have earrings. A few may depict hunting scenes. And maybe that's why they were made, to show status and accomplishments. There's lots of glyphs of animals of all type, large and small. There's even footprints. They think this one's a bear. Perhaps this guy was a farmer. There are also lots of geometric shapes that are likely just decorations or art. Is this proof that prehistoric people just wanted to express themselves, just as graffiti artists do today? Who knows? Some of the designs are similar to those found on pottery of the same era. From the top, there's a nice view of the Tularosa Basin. To the east is the range that uplifted during the rifting process. Most of the basin is to the west. As we look at the north end of the Missile Range, it's frequently filled with dust devils. After a rough and tricky section on the trail, I stopped to chat with some folks. They're experienced RVers who love seeing the West. Except for her. She's blind. And she just made it up the tricky part, with a little help from her friends. So why do you do these things?
I don't want to be bored.
I tried to interview her, but the wind was just too much. She said she lost her sight when her son was a teenager, and she wanted to show him that there were no obstacles that couldn't be overcome. She walked the walk. Such encounters are the best parts of road trips. Her love of adventure is infectious and inspiring. The shelter is about a mile out. It's generally my turnaround point, though there are several trails beyond it. On hot days, it's a nice place to rest and hit your water bottle. On the way back, since you'll be looking at the other side of the rocks, you're going to see different stuff. On this trip, I missed one of my favorites on the way out, and I wanted to make sure I found it on the way back. It's one of the more famous, and it's marked by number 7. It took me a bit of a scramble, but I eventually did find it. It's the sheep with 3 arrows. It's a pretty obvious record of a hunting scene. This is my favorite of the glyphs, and I really do want to see it every time I'm here. Now that I have, it's time to head back. You can spend as much time here as you want. A quick visit can take as little as 90 minutes, but 2.5 hours is better. Of course, you can spend days here, especially if you go glyph hunting in the brush. I've seen really good photos from down in there, but I suppose that's also where the snakes live. I have one fear about doing this video. It's that too many people will come here. This is a fragile place, and it needs to be respected. With a little help from the pamphlet map, I'm going to take you on my first trip to the village site. It begins opposite the main entrance. This is the only sign, so once again, don't bring your dog. My channel includes guides to many of North America's biggest prehistoric sites. This will be my first small one. It's only a 5-minute walk. The first sign is a plea not to damage the site. Turns out the village was all around us. It was first established near the highway about 1,000 years ago, with simple pit houses, which are really just big holes with a roof. But this land was very fertile, and they got a lot more rain here back then, making it easy to grow corn, beans, and squash. And as we've already seen, there's plenty of game and fish. So the village became prosperous, providing its citizens with a rare thing for the age: free time. Lucky for us, they used it to make things like petroglyphs. And it also enabled them to grow the population, which peaked around the year 1300. Interestingly, this is not long after Chaco collapsed, perhaps due to drought. It appears that this area still had plenty of water, because the village sprawled out all the way to here. Today, the area is still largely untouched. And let's keep it that way. Just 3 rooms have been reconstructed. And if you take the right fork, this is the first. It's an example of the early pit house style, as the archaeologists found it. But you can just imagine that back in the day, this whole area was covered with houses like these. The rest of the area remains largely untouched. A little further down the trail is one of the more modern homes, and had 3 rooms. One for cooking, with a pit pantry. One for sleeping, with a gypsum floor. And the other was kind of a living room. On the eerier side of things, it was tradition back in the day to bury your family under your house. And 2 bodies were found under this one. The last ruin shows what happens to adobe over time. It returns to Earth, which is one reason why it takes a trained eye to spot a village like this. Some of you may be disappointed by the reconstructions. No, they're not as grand as European cathedrals or even some of the other pre-American sites in the Southwest. But for me, it's nice to see these in a natural state, nearly as they were when they were abandoned in the early 1400s. Perhaps that drought spread to here. No one knows where they went next. though a nearby tribe believes that they are descendants. Well, that's Three Rivers Petroglyph site. I just love this place, mostly because it's unaltered history and full of unknowns. The petroglyphs are untouched. They're everywhere. There's no fences. There's something kind of unique about that. And even these reconstructions are very simple. It's pretty much as they really were when they were found. So when you're in the area, I highly recommend take the short 3-mile detour to the Three Rivers Petroglyph site. I don't think you'll be disappointed.